The amphitheater loomed beneath twin suns, carved from black obsidian and lined with thrumming energy pylons. Rows upon rows of alien dignitaries, officers, and nobles packed the upper levels, their jewel-toned robes shimmering like liquid under the light. Their eyes, some compound, some glowing, fixed on the center stage, a dust-covered pit stained by 1,000 deaths. The grand arena of Vorta Quell was not merely a spectacle. It was tradition, justice, and domination. A reminder of the Galactic Empire's absolute rule. A horn screamed. The gates groaned open. He was thrown in like trash, a human. Average height, muddied fatigues clinging to a gaunt frame, shackled wrists, no armor, no weapon, no ceremony. Just a single soldier dragged through the dirt, like a feral beast. The crowd erupted in laughter. A diplomat from the Tresari clucked his mandibles together. They still send mammals? I expected more drama. The man didn't speak. He stood slowly, wincing, one eye swollen shut. A line of dried blood traced his jaw. He blinked up at the rows of spectators with hollow eyes, dead calm. Something clinked as he adjusted his posture. A small metallic tag swayed against his chest, barely noticeable, almost insignificant. An arena guard stepped forward. 8 feet tall, armored in iridescent plates, his booming voice echoed. By command of the Galactic Empire, this Terran war specimen is sentenced to trial by death. May his extinction serve as instruction. The gates opposite him opened. The crowd leaned forward. The first beast came out. On all 6 limbs, a sinewed predator bred in vacuum and reared in gravity pits. Its hide was volcanic glass, its eyes lidless. Twin jaws unfolded sideways, each tooth like sculpted ivory. It reared back and let out a sound that wasn't a roar, but a pressure wave that shook the pillars. The human didn't flinch. He turned, his head slightly. Measured, breathing low, centered. The beast charged. The crowd screamed for blood. He didn't run. Instead, he stepped toward it. The move was subtle, wrong, and fast. Too fast. The beast adjusted, lunged left. The human dropped under the leap. Sand flew. He twisted beneath the monster's bulk, rolled, and emerged at its flank. His arm snapped up. Fist met muscle. A crunch echoed. The beast howled. Its front leg buckled. 1 second later, the man was on its back, hands wrapped around a cartilage spine behind the skull. He yanked. A sound like tearing leather. The thing collapsed. Silence fell. The arena forgot to cheer. The human stood up, covered in black ichor, chest heaving. He looked at the Empire's audience again. Not defiant, not victorious. Just assessing, analyzing. One alien noble muttered in confusion. How did he? Another gate opened. Laughter rose again. Relief returned. A fluke, someone scoffed. Luck. This one was larger. Genetically stabilized, plated in reactive armor, twice the first's mass. It entered with intelligence in its eyes and contempt in its gait. The human bent and pulled something from the first beast's corpse, a fang the size of a forearm, cracked, jagged. He tested its balance like a knife, then turned to face the newcomer. This time, the fight lasted longer. Claws slashed, sand erupted, bones cracked. He didn't win by brute strength. He used movement, timing. Every dodge barely passed fatal margins. Every strike landed on joints, not armor. Every moment was a lesson learned in real time. The alien tacticians watching began to whisper. He's adapting. Fast. No. Mimicking. 10 minutes later, the second beast lay still, convulsing. A hole in its throat. The human limped away, favoring his left side now, breathing harder, bleeding. He reached the center, of the arena and dropped the bloody fang. The crowd waited for him to scream or cry or posture. He did none of those things. Instead, he reached up and adjusted the chain around his neck. The small blood-smeared metal tag flipped forward. Some alien with an optic zoom fixated on it. Words, scratched, in human script. Numbers, letters, a unit designation. Dog tag, a Vesh general muttered. Why would a disposable carry rank insignia? A silence spread, hesitant and unnatural. A few began accessing the database from their terminals. Others stared. Something was shifting, but no one understood why yet. The human stared up at them, his gaze steady. Not angry, not triumphant, just patient. Then he sat down, right there in the sand. Cross-legged, meditative, as if he had all the time in the galaxy. In the Emperor's balcony, silence ruled. One advisor leaned close and whispered, "Should we clear the arena?" The Emperor's second jaw twitched. "Let's see how long it takes him to break." In the surveillance chamber behind the arena, high-level commanders watched on separate feeds. One replayed the fight from multiple angles. "He uses bone leverage like he studied that species, but that one was custom-grown. No tactical record exists." Another snapped, "There is no record because no one ever survived them." Still the human had. One junior analyst zoomed in on the dog tag, paused, eyes widened. "Wait, wait, run that string again." A pause, then a single word on every encrypted data slate. "Deceased. Staff Sergeant Elias Rourke. Confirmed KIA. 42 years ago. No known resurrection protocol assigned. But this is him," the analyst whispered. "Exact biomatch, neural pattern, retinal structure. This is him." "No," said his superior. "That's impossible. The Phoenix program was shut down. Or buried," the analyst muttered. In the arena, Elias Rourke watched the clouds gather over the amphitheater. A storm front, rare in this part of the planet. He tasted ozone and grit, closed his eyes. He hadn't spoken a word since landing, hadn't asked for anything. But now, in that silence, he murmured something almost too low to hear. Same sky, different monsters. Then he lay back in the sand, arms behind his head. As if the arena were his campfire, as if the galaxy hadn't just tried to humiliate him for sport. One of the alien guards watching muttered, "Is this arrogance?" Another shook his head. "No, it's something worse." "Confidence?" "No." A pause. "It's experience." In the balconies above, nobles shifted uncomfortably. No one clapped. No one cheered. Somewhere behind the walls, alarms began to hum. Elias Rourke closed his eyes and smiled slightly. And far above the arena, orbiting the planet's atmosphere, a dormant Imperial AI monitoring criminal subjects blinked. Found something. Access level. Restricted clearance required. Omega Black subject. Tag match. Active. Phoenix, 13 status. Classified orders. Observation. Only risk level. Apex, contingency. The system froze. Then, quietly, began recording. Back in the sand, Rourke breathed slow and steady, waiting, watching, calculating. Above him, the Empire remained still, silent, and for the first time in generations, unsure. The storm broke just after the third combatant fell. Lightning arced across the sky, casting skeletal shadows along the edges of the arena. Spectators flinched beneath sudden winds, robes flapping like shredded banners. But Elias Rourke remained, motionless, sprawled in the dirt, as if the galaxy's wrath were no more than a breeze across his cheek. His eyes tracked the cloud patterns. His fingers traced slow patterns in the sand, calculated, rhythmic, a kind of tactile mapping. Every movement, no matter how idle it seemed, carried purpose. In the upper decks, two Yadari archivists whispered, behind their curved visors, cycling through fleet archives and soldier registries. No matter how many parameters they applied, one truth kept returning. The man in the pit did not belong. Not here, not now, not anymore. And yet there he was, disrupting the Empire's sacred rituals with nothing but blood and discipline. It unsettled them. The Empire had rules, order, boundaries. This human defied all three. Inside the surveillance hall, Admiral Sorek leaned forward. One mechanical arm ticked against his belt, fingers tapping in a rhythm that mirrored the heartbeat of the arena's systems. His gaze held fast on the screen. "I want to know what happened at Site Theta 9, he said. "No more redacted nonsense. The Phoenix Initiative was decommissioned for a reason." "What reason?" The room hesitated. A technician offered, "There are legends, sir." "I don't want legends," Sorek growled. But legends were all anyone had. Back in the pit, Rourke stood. His joints cracked audibly as he moved, like a machine waking from hibernation. He rubbed his wrists where the shackles had cut in. The bruises were fading faster than they should. The blood dried quicker than it should. The murmurs from the crowd thickened with something foreign to their culture. Doubt, a new gate opened. This time the creature that emerged wasn't a beast, but a humanoid. Tall, armored, elite. A member of the Vakor execution caste. Its armor shimmered with adaptive polymers, bristling with energy capacitors and carbon spike launchers. It didn't roar. It spoke. "Human," it said, voice like grinding glass. "Identify yourself." Rourke tilted his head. Said nothing. The Vakor's helmet folded back. A hairless, ridged skull emerged, marked with ceremonial tattoos. Its eyes glowed faint blue. It took a single step forward, lowering its spear. "You are not supposed to exist." Rourke stepped once to the side. Testing balance. Blood trickled down his ribs, staining the tag still swinging from his neck. "Do you comprehend me?" Rourke's voice emerged, dry and sharp. "Yeah, I comprehend a lot of things." The alien narrowed its eyes. "You were declared dead in the Terran cleansing campaigns. 42 cycles passed. Your unit was terminated, your records purged." Rourke smiled without warmth. "Yeah, well, bureaucracy's a hell of a thing." A hum of shifting perception rippled through the crowd. The alien drew a thin, serrated blade from its thigh. "This is not a war zone. This is judicial combat, honor-bound, trial by superiority." Rourke's hands opened slightly, fingers twitching. "And yet, I'm still here." They clashed. Steel met energy. Sand exploded beneath them. The first strikes were tests, gauges of speed, of nerve. The Vakor was faster, trained, efficient. But Rourke moved like something rebuilt for war. There were no wasted steps, no hesitation. Every block redirected. Every slip became leverage. Within moments, the Vakor's strikes became defensive, then desperate. Rourke dodged a lunge and drove his elbow into the alien's throat. The spear clattered to the ground. Before the Vakor could recover, Rourke seized its own blade, flipped it, and embedded it under the armored chest plate. Not a kill. A message. The crowd recoiled. Rourke let go and took a step back, eyes unblinking. The Vakor wheezed. "You're not supposed to fight like us." "I don't," Rourke said. "You fight like data. I fight like history." The words struck deeper than the blade. The alien crumpled, eyes wide, not with pain, but comprehension. From the Emperor's chamber, a slender figure descended. One of the overseers. Rarely seen in physical form, it hovered above the arena floor in anti-grav robes woven with logic thread. Its voice rang through the stadium without amplification. "Human, you will be remanded for extraction and examination. Your presence here violates 9 accords and 3 extinction-level designations." Rourke didn't look at the overseer. His eyes scanned the balconies. He pointed to a cluster of uniformed aliens behind a polished force field. "There," he said. "The one in the red mantle. That's the one who gave the order, isn't it?" The crowd turned. The alien in question, a Zyrex Strategos, stiffened. "You killed a city with orbital fire to draw out my unit," Rourke said. "Targeted the Medcorps first, not for tactics, for fear. You wanted an example." The Zyrex stood but said nothing. Rourke took a breath. "Here I am." The Overseer's glow pulsed. "Your species does not have authority to prosecute claims under our dominion." Rourke's gaze sharpened. "Yeah, that's why we stopped asking for permission." In the chamber above, someone gasped. In a culture rooted in hierarchy and procedure, such disregard was sacrilege. Yet the man below stood like a blade through their laws. The Overseer's tone turned colder. "What is your classification?" Rourke stepped forward. "Survivor. That is not a designation." "It is now." A long silence followed. The crowd didn't cheer. The officials didn't speak. Every data feed in the system streamed the moment, pinging to every capital, every tribunal, every corner of the Empire's network. Within moments, planets knew the name Rourke. In the depths of the data network, an old AI fragment awoke. Buried deep in forgotten code, it accessed files sealed after the fall of Earth's Western Defense Corps. It read battle reports, casualty logs, black site schematics. One file surfaced, Operation Emberwake, a last-ditch effort to preserve Terran. Combat evolution via high-density memory imprinting and organo-reconstruction. The Phoenix Initiative. The AI sent a pulse across hidden channels. Asset confirmed active. Aboard a distant satellite, a ghost signal stirred. In the pit, Rourke turned to face the Overseer directly. "I've seen your trials, your justice, your chains dressed as diplomacy. I'm not here for redemption. I'm here for balance." The Overseer hovered lower. "You presume you have the authority?" Rourke smiled. "No. I am the consequence." The Vakor still writhed on the ground, bleeding out. It looked up at Rourke with a different expression now. Not fury. Not confusion. Respect. "Where did you train?" it rasped. Rourke knelt, whispered something only the dying alien could hear. The Vakor's eyes widened, then closed. The Overseer began to rise, its glow flickering uncertainly. Rourke stood, again facing the crowd. "You've built an empire on protocol and fear. But fear cracks. Protocol bends. You forgot one thing. Silence." He reached up, grasped the dog tag again. "You forgot we bury our dead in silence. But they don't stay buried forever." He let the tag fall. In the command chamber, Admiral Sorek issued an order. "Seal the arena." "Why?" someone asked. "Because if that man walks out, our laws collapse." Another technician shook their head. "It's too late. He's already free. We just didn't see it." Down in the pit, the rain began falling harder. Rourke looked up into the storm, with eyes like flint. Somewhere beyond the clouds, something responded. The air in the arena shifted. What had once been a static charge of overwhelming Imperial authority was now fractured, broken by a single man's defiance. Rourke could feel it, the tremor beneath the Empire's vast foundation. He'd sparked something, an irreparable crack in their perfect order, and that crack was widening with every passing second. The Overseer, still hovering above the sand, recalibrated its stance, uncertain. The Vakor, now silent, was nothing but a reminder of what had been, and Rourke wasn't about to let anyone forget it. For a brief moment, everything seemed suspended, as if the galaxy itself was waiting for someone to move. The Empire's pride had been bruised, but the wound was deepening. Rourke's presence here wasn't a mere anomaly anymore. It was a statement. Something more dangerous than any weapon the Empire had at its disposal. A voice broke through the tense quiet, its tone cold and calculating. "Rourke, I've been tracking your every move." The words were sharp, precise, like the crack of a whip. They came from the highest balcony, a place Rourke had already catalogued as the seat of power. The voice belonged to Lord Andreas, the Xerix Strategos, who had given the orders to eradicate Earth's medical corps. A man who, until now, had wielded fear like a weapon. But there was something different in his voice now. Something more cautious, more aware of the dangerous forces he'd unleashed. Rourke's eyes scanned the arena, meeting the cold, calculating gaze of Andreas. "I knew you'd be watching," he said, his voice low but carrying with a dangerous edge. Andreas's lips curled into a small, calculating smile. "You were supposed to be dead. You were supposed to remain a footnote in history. Yet here you are disturbing the peace of an empire." Rourke's hand went to his dog tag, the same tag that had seen the death of his unit, the mark of a forgotten soldier. His fingers tightened around it, but he didn't pull it out. "I'm not here to disturb anything. I'm here to take it all apart, piece by piece." The words hung in the air, laced with a quiet confidence that struck at the core of the Xerix. Lord's composure. Lord Andreas's gaze hardened, though there was a flicker of uncertainty in his eyes. Rourke had done more than survive. He'd just shattered the Empire's carefully crafted narrative, and that was something even the most powerful leaders feared. Because if the Empire's narrative could crumble, what else could fall with it? The Overseer, still hovering like a wraith, tilted its head, calculating the best course of action. It seemed to hesitate for the first time. The Emperor had been clear. Rourke's presence here was a test, a trial. But trials had rules, and Rourke didn't play by the rules. The Overseer adjusted its position slightly, a mechanical hum accompanying the shift in gravity. It was no longer certain that the arena's framework could contain the man who stood in its center. "You've made your mark," Andreas finally said, his voice carrying the weight of someone who had long since learned to control his emotions. "But that doesn't mean you've won." Rourke smiled, the curve of his lips dangerous and calm. "Who said anything about winning?" He took a slow step forward, planting his feet firmly in the sand. "I'm just getting started." The words were more than a challenge. They were a declaration, an affront to everything the Xerix had built over millennia. Andreas, despite his confidence, couldn't ignore the small prick of doubt beginning to crawl under his skin. The human, this soldier, wasn't just a physical threat. There was something else, something more insidious, a force of will that threatened to upend their entire way of life. "You think you can break the Empire?" Andreas asked, a sneer curling his lips. "You think your petty rebellion means anything to the Galactic Order? We've crushed species more powerful than yours without breaking a sweat." Rourke's gaze never left him. "You think too highly of yourselves." The arena was eerily quiet, but in the Empire's far reaches, the message was already spreading. The soundless ripple of Rourke's defiance echoed across encrypted frequencies, through ships in orbit and military outposts. It reverberated in ways that only the highest officials understood. His name was not just a whisper anymore. It was the beginning of something larger, something that would soon consume the Empire from the inside out. Lord Andreas straightened, his posture rigid, as if drawing strength from the imperial doctrine. "Do you really think you can defeat us with your outdated human tactics? We've outgrown your kind, Rourke. Your people are nothing but relics. Rourke's interruption was deliberate, cutting through Andreas's arrogance like a knife through butter. "You talk too much," he said. "You've forgotten how to listen." Andreas narrowed his eyes, but it was the Overseer that moved first, its voice cold and final. "You will be detained. This charade ends now." Before Rourke could respond, a surge of force slammed into his chest, sending him stumbling backward. It was not a physical blow, but one of energy, a wave of power designed to disorient and subdue. Rourke hit the ground hard, the sand exploding around him as his body struggled to absorb the impact. He rose slowly, shaking the dizziness from his head. He wasn't unconscious, but the impact had been enough to rattle him. The overseer hovered. Above him, a glowing figure of authority and control. "You should have known your place," the overseer said, its voice distorted, but the edge of uncertainty still lingered. Rourke straightened, every muscle in his body screaming at him to fall back, but he wasn't going to retreat. Not now. Not when he was so close. "You think this is going to stop me?" he said, his words dripping with defiance. "You think a little light show is enough to bring me down?" The overseer's glow flickered, a crackle of static accompanying the response. "This is not just a light show. This is the Empire's will, and you will bend to it." Rourke's hand went to his side, brushing against the hilt of a blade hidden beneath his tattered uniform. His fingers wrapped around it, the metal cool and familiar in his grip. "Your will? I've already told you. I don't play by your rules." The overseer hesitated again, its stance faltering for the briefest moment. But that moment was enough. Rourke lunged forward, his movements a blur, a flash of desperate precision. The blade in his hand drove forward with the kind of lethal intent that only someone who had faced death countless times could muster. The overseer's form flickered, its sensors overloaded by the sudden onslaught. And for the first time since Rourke's appearance, the alien entity recoiled, unprepared. The crowd gasped, and Andreas took a sharp breath, his mind racing to comprehend the situation unfolding before him. This wasn't supposed to happen. Rourke wasn't supposed to get this far. "Enough!" Andreas barked, but his voice cracked. "Hold him!" But it was already too late. Rourke had already taken control of the moment, and the fear that had once been reserved for those who held power in the Empire now radiated from their leaders. They had underestimated him. They had underestimated humanity. For the first time since his capture, Rourke allowed himself a moment of satisfaction. The battle was far from over. But this was the turning point. The silence in the arena grew suffocating, as if the entire universe was holding its breath. Rourke stood at the center, his chest heaving from the effort, the taste of adrenaline still sharp in his mouth. He hadn't expected this to be easy, but he hadn't anticipated how quickly the Empire would shift from indifference to panic. The overseer was still reeling, its form flickering as it recalibrated itself, but Rourke wasn't about to give it a moment's reprieve. He could feel the shift in the air, the weight of the Empire's authority beginning to fracture like glass. Lord Andreas remained unmoving, his gaze locked on Rourke. There was no arrogance left in his eyes, only a cold calculation that spoke to the deeper fear stirring beneath his skin. He had been the one to send Rourke here, the one who had decided that humanity's champion should be nothing more than a tool for sport, something to be discarded when the game was done. But now, Rourke was turning the game back on them, and Andreas wasn't sure how to play it anymore. "Do you think you've won?" Andreas' voice was steady, but there was a tremor in it, a hint of uncertainty that hadn't been there before. "You're just one man. You've barely scratched the surface of what the Empire can do." Rourke's eyes narrowed, and he took a step forward, his boots scraping against the sand. "One man is all it takes, especially when that one man's been underestimated." Andreas's lips twitched, but he didn't respond. Instead, his gaze flickered to the overseer, still trying to regain its composure. The creature had been designed to be a pinnacle of power, a representation of the Empire's vast technological might. And yet, here it was, struggling against a single human. It was a bitter pill for the Xerix Lord to swallow, one that left a burning taste of doubt in his mouth. But as Rourke took another step forward, the arena's atmosphere shifted again. There was a hum of energy, a flickering of light across the edges of the arena, and the walls seemed to pulse with an eerie anticipation. The overseer had been given a direct order from the highest authority: subdue the human. And it would obey, no matter what it took. The overseer extended its form, a beam of concentrated energy flaring from its core, aimed directly at Rourke. The blast surged forward with a speed that should have been impossible to evade. But Rourke, already attuned to the rhythm of battle, twisted in mid-air, his body moving in a fluid, calculated arc. The blast passed harmlessly behind him, leaving a trail of scorched sand in its wake. He was faster than they expected, smarter, and that was the part that was starting to crack the Empire's composed exterior. The Overseer shifted its energy patterns, recalculating Rourke's movements. Another blast surged forward, but this time Rourke was ready. With a swift motion, he rolled to the side, his hand coming to rest on the edge of a broken pillar. He reached up, tearing the fragment loose, and hurled it directly at the Overseer. The massive stone struck its form, causing a ripple of energy to cascade outward. Rourke didn't give it time to recover. He moved again, faster than the Overseer could react. In a blur, he was on the offensive, his movements a whirlwind of deadly intent. The energy blasts were no longer enough to stop him. They were mere distractions. Rourke's mind was sharp, focused entirely on the task at hand, and his body responded without hesitation, as if everything, every fight, every sacrifice, had been leading to this moment. Andreas watched, his eyes wide, as the Overseer staggered. For the first time, the being was not in control. It was losing. He had underestimated Rourke. He had thought that this human, this relic of a dying species, would be nothing more than a disposable pawn, a momentary distraction in the grand scheme of the Empire's power. But what Rourke had shown him, what the entire arena was witnessing, was something far more dangerous than just physical strength. It was determination, ingenuity, and an unyielding will to survive. It was the essence of humanity distilled into a single being, standing against an empire that had long believed itself invincible. "You're a fool," Andreas hissed, his voice edged with venom. "You're playing into a game you can't possibly win?" Rourke didn't respond. He didn't need to. His actions spoke louder than any words ever could. His dog tag, once a symbol of a fallen soldier, was now the emblem of something much greater: resistance. The Overseer finally gave a shrill cry, its body shifting and distorting as it attempted to recalibrate once again. But Rourke was already there, his movements precise, his every decision calculated for maximum impact. He closed the distance between them, his blade now flashing in the arena's harsh light. With a single fluid motion, he plunged it deep into the Overseer's core, the energy signature flickering violently before it finally went dim. The creature's form disintegrated into nothingness, leaving only a faint shimmer of residual energy in the air. And in that moment, Rourke realized something crucial. The Empire was not as invincible as it had led everyone to believe. In fact, it was fragile. All it took was one spark to ignite a blaze. The crowd, once silent, now erupted into chaos. But it wasn't the roar of victory that filled the air. It was something far more unsettling. Fear. Rourke stood alone in the center of the arena, the remnants of the Overseer's energy flickering around him like the last dying embers of a fire. His breath came in sharp gasps, but his mind was already calculating the next move. The battle was far from over, and the real challenge was just beginning. Andreas, his jaw clenched tight, remained unmoving. He could feel it now, the weight of his own uncertainty, the dawning realization that the Empire's grip on the galaxy was no longer as secure as it once had been. Rourke wasn't just a symbol of resistance. He was a harbinger of something much bigger. "You've made a mistake," Rourke said, his voice steady, almost casual. "The Empire doesn't own the galaxy. You just haven't realized it yet." The words rang out, defiant and final. Andreas was silent, his mind spinning, but Rourke's gaze was unwavering. In that moment, he knew something that Andreas didn't. The war had already begun. The game had shifted. And Rourke? He was just getting started. As the sounds of the arena's chaos echoed in the distance, Rourke turned his back on the defeated overseer and Lord Andreas. He didn't need to look back. The Empire's downfall was already underway, and he would be there, every step of the way, to ensure it burned to the ground.